At the same time, on the other side of the military district, explosions and smoke erupted. Dong Shengyai brushed the dust off his sleeves and said, "Ha, so weak." He looked at the people lying on the ground and sneered, "Is this all you've got?" The people were horrified, murmuring, "So strong, too strong." Seeing the overwhelming pressure emanating from Sheng Yi, they were filled with fear. He's too powerful. Even all the elite generals in the top 10 rushed at him, but they couldn't do anything. What are we supposed to do now? Sheng Yi walked over and waved at King Su, calling, "Dong King Su." King Su waved back, "Dong Sheng Yi." Then a hand reached out from behind, and there's me. It was Wan appearing on the scene. Dong Sheng Yi, who had been living in seclusion for 20 years, had finally shown himself. His appearance was enough to shock everyone. "Hello, King Su." King Su responded, "Miss Lin Wan, you must have come to the military district with your brother for something important, right?" Wan happily linked arms with King Su. "Of course, Sister King Su." Wan lowered her voice and whispered to King Su, "I'm working on a research project related to strange creature genes. I need a large number of samples, so I came here with Brother Dong." She continued quietly, "I was hoping to recruit more people from this military district, but Brother Dong defeated everyone already." Sheng Yi, standing across from them, spoke up, "The people from this eastern military district are all useless. They lack combat skills and abilities, just a bunch of nobodies. The only one with any real ability is that top-ranked Sun Hao Yu." King Su corrected him, "It's Sun Heng Yu." Sheng Yi's eyes glinted with disdain. "It doesn't matter. A person who can't even take 3 of my attacks isn't worth remembering." Sheng Yi walked up to her and said, "That's right, little sister. Wan must have told you already, right? We're here at the Eastern Military District to prepare for the descent into the abyss." He placed his hands on King Su's shoulders. "We need your help, Spirit Thought Master." King Su glanced at Wan standing nearby, her mind racing. Lin Wan, such a common name, but her mother, Lin Zhen Yu, was a famous martial artist in Dragon Nation, a martial saint. King Su nodded and asked, "So, where are you two planning to go in the abyss? How deep are you going?" Sheng Yi was sure they would go deep into the SS-level abyss. The deeper you go, the stronger the strange creatures become, and the rarer the genetic samples are. He looked at King Su seriously. "Don't underestimate Wan's research project. If it succeeds, it could completely change the martial world. This might be the revolution that shapes the path of martial saints." He turned to Wan and added, "Who knows? It could even end up benefiting you." Wan laughed. "Oh, Dong, you're teasing me again." Meanwhile, King Su, holding the pendant in her hand, spoke up. "All right," she agreed. She tightened her grip on the pendant and said, "I'll help, but only if you agree to one thing." Sheng Yi raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's your condition?" Then with a smile, he added, "Sure, go ahead and tell me. By the way, you're about to break through to Grandmaster level, right?" He paused as if considering something. King Su cut him off. "It has nothing to do with martial arts. Are you planning to go down the elite general ranking, one level at a time?" Sheng Yi admitted, "That's right. While they're not exactly challenging opponents, since they're here, we might as well treat it as a warm-up." King Su's cheeks flushed red as she hesitated before making a request, then skip number 4, okay. Sheng Yi touched his chin thoughtfully. "Who's number 4? King Su stood silently next to him. Sheng Yi smiled. "Ah, that's right. It's General Lu Sheng, a 12-star officer from the 9th War Zone." With that, Sheng Yi casually brushed past King Su. He glanced at the pendant in his hand. "This thing, he gave it to you, didn't he? Interesting. His martial spirit is quite pure." King Su, looking tense, demanded, "Give it back to me now." Sheng Yi returned it with a light chuckle. "You're just the same as when you were a kid. Can't even take a joke. But since you brought him up, I'll do as you wish and let him off the hook this time." Sheng Yi smiled again. "Once I've dealt with the 5 major war zones, the guy you like has to withstand at least one move from me. Only then will I acknowledge him and promise to stay out of your relationship." His eyes turned serious as he looked directly at King Su. "If he can't, then no matter how much you like him, it's not happening. Do you understand?" King Su remained silent. Standing before her, Sheng Yi continued, "This test I'm giving him is already easy. On Dong Po Tian's side, it won't be so simple. Remember when you were little? That kid from the Qin family who lived next door tried to court you, and Po Tian almost beat him to death on the spot, didn't he?" King Su's eyes were filled with worry. Sheng Yi smiled warmly and placed a reassuring hand on King Su's shoulder. "Take your time to think it over carefully. After all, not everyone who plays the role of an older brother is as understanding, composed, and considerate as I am." Wan gently took King Su's hand and flashed a bright smile. "Don't worry, Sister King Su. When the time comes, I'll make sure senior brother backs off. I promise the person you care about won't get hurt. Shang Yi turned to Wan Wan and said, Lin Wan Wan, if there ever comes a day when you want to date, your boyfriend is going to have an even tougher time. Your mom's a martial saint and you've got a whole group of martial artists, senior brothers, who are practically legends. Wan Wan's confidence didn't waver. My mom listens to me and my senior brothers listen to her. What's there for me to worry about? With an enthusiastic crack of his knuckles, Shang Yi started walking forward with determination. Let's go! Head to the battle zone. In 3 days, I'll wipe out all the top fighters on the Eastern Elite General Leaderboard. After that, I'll be fully ready to head into the abyss. Lu Sheng, I miss you. Meanwhile, in the dreamscape, the sky was shrouded in darkness, with zombies wandering below. Lu Sheng surveyed the scene, reflecting on how he had never realized before just how remarkable the people around King Su were. Before him were 3 images, each displaying impressive rankings. One person was rated 5 stars, another 6 stars. Dong Sheng-yi's abilities seemed manageable, but Dong Po-tian was a 9th level martial saint. Even so, it had taken over 100 years to progress beyond the 8th level of the Great Master Realm. Such a time frame wasn't unusual, but it was still a testament to extraordinary talent. It was clear these were individuals of immense potential and unmatched prowess. Lu Sheng sighed. A martial saint is just a martial saint. Martial saints have appeared in the martial world for the last 10,000 years, so there really are quite a few of them. The 3 martial saints of the Dragon Nation today aren't even considered part of the top 3,000-year lineage, let alone someone like Dong Po-tian, who's just a small figure. His gaze softened. Dong King Su. Lu Sheng thought about reaching out to King Su. To say, I don't like her would be a lie. If any young man who's ever had a crush on a teacher were asked, more than 90% of men in the world would probably admit it. King Su's hand also reached out to Lu Sheng. When you're young, you often secretly fall in love with a teacher, whether it's a male or female teacher. The hormones and admiration stir emotions, planting a seed in your innocent heart. Of course, most of those seeds never grow and wither away before they even have a chance. Peach blossom petals fell, and then King Su's hand vanished. This delicate feeling would be swept away by time, vanishing like smoke as soon as you try to grasp it. Maybe my feelings for Dong King Su started when I saw her as a potential partner. Was that fate? Lu Sheng wondered. Next, I'll train a little, then after I wake up, I'll go make some money. If Dong Sheng Yi comes looking for me, I'll just use a few tricks to defeat him. It'll be fine. Lu Sheng thought carefully. Hopefully, I won't give myself away too much pretending like this. As my future brother-in-law, I've got to give him some face no matter what. 3 days later, the sky was clear at Lu Sheng's house. He was sitting in a chair, casually scrolling through his phone. Zhang Dan Dan, Yang Yan, if they weren't potential partners, he wouldn't bother with them anymore. Names appeared on the phone screen. Zhang Dan Dan, He Ling Su, Yang Yan, He Su So. It had been a while since he'd been in touch with any of them. Lu Sheng sent a message to He Ling Su. Are you there? Ling Su replied, I was hoping to report to you on the recent progress with the spiritual medicine development. A flood of messages followed. Lu Sheng sighed in frustration. Shit. The notifications kept coming in, loud and relentless. Lu Sheng couldn't help but think, asterisk, can I really marry this woman? Asterisk, she only ever contacts me to report work. Forget it, I can't keep this conversation going. On his phone screen, Ling Su sent a file attachment, her report. Lu Sheng typed back, it's getting cold lately, so make sure to stay warm and don't overwork yourself. Your health is more important. He thought to himself, asterisk, just showing a little care for her asterisk. Ling Su was surprised. What's going on here? Lu Sheng, the bloodsucker, is actually saying something sweet. A new message came through. Lu Sheng glanced at it with a small grunt. Ling Su sent a long message. Who are you? Who stole Lu Sheng's phone? If you find someone else's phone, you should return it. Don't you know? The message was followed by an emoji of someone wagging their finger. Lu Sheng was speechless. He also found it odd. It had been 3 days, but Dong Sheng Yi still hadn't shown up. Lu Sheng looked at the news on the screen, which reported that he had defeated all the top fighters in the Eastern Military District. Aside from Sun Heng Yu, who could hold his own? The rest were easy targets. Dong Sheng Yi had defeated the #1 fighter in the 9th combat zone, and there was no stopping him. Clearly, he had beaten everyone, but he hadn't gone after the person ranked 4th, me. Interesting. Did he deliberately skip me? Lu Sheng smiled. This meant he had been spared, probably because of Dong King Su. He hadn't expected to feel like a freeloader, but here he was experiencing it. Holding a cup of hot water in his hand, Lu Sheng said, if he's giving face to his sister, then I'll give face to my wife. If you don't provoke me, I won't hit you. He placed the cup down on the table and thought, asterisk, it's time for a trip to the Abyss asterisk. With the Eastern Military District's large-scale battle still a few days away, he needed money, not just for crafting weapons, but for his future marriage, the dowry, and to support his wife and kids. All of that required funds. Lu Sheng shoved his hands into his pockets and spoke up. Lai Dai, help me gather something. I'm going on a mission. Lai Dai lowered her head and replied, yes, sir. Meanwhile, in the SS level abyss, Wan jumped down, rubbing her body with her hands. It was freezing down here. Sheng Yi stood with his hands on his hips, but anyone with a bit of skill in martial arts wouldn't be bothered by the cold. Such a good physique was a waste. Wan took out her pendant, letting it shine a bit. Not everyone was keen on pursuing the martial way, after all. After that, Wan felt a warm surge of energy in her body. She was happy, and with it, the coldness disappeared. Meanwhile, King Su, still cold and detached, held the object in her hand. Sheng Yi teased, this is pretty similar to what that kid gave you, but the value is on a completely different level. Inside, it contains the will of a martial saint. There's no comparison. King Su thought to herself that this one was definitely much better. Sheng Yi's gaze sharpened, and without wasting any more time, he began. The two of them mostly focused on testing their strength, so there was no need for direct confrontation. All the strange creatures would be handled by him. Wan excited, watched from behind, while King Su remained unmoved, her face as cold as ever. At Abyss Level S, Lu Sheng stood before the abyssal pit. The last time he entered was at night, but now it was daytime. As Lu Sheng stepped closer, the atmosphere felt a little less oppressive, the usual darkness easing a bit. Lu Sheng believed that fear came from weakness. When you are strong enough, it doesn't matter what kind of demons or evil gods stand in front of you. They are nothing but baseless threats. His gaze dropped toward the abyss below. With a single punch, he could obliterate it all. Without hesitation, Lu Sheng leaped down. He wondered if the consciousness from the deep depths of the abyss still lingered there. Did it exist only in the abyss level AA, or was it present in every abyss? Lu Sheng looked down at the place he was about to jump into, feeling no fear at all. The last time he had checked, he already knew the opponent was nothing more than a paper tiger. He was still lost in thought. Even if the enemy was stronger than him, that power wouldn't really matter. If it could, why would they need to trick him into coming closer in the first place? Lu Sheng's foot hit the ground, causing the earth to shatter into chunks of stone. He smiled. If he could run into something serious, it would be better to back off as soon as possible. He wasn't sure what Dong King Su was up to right now, though. Meanwhile, over by King Su, Sheng Yi was easily wiping out strange creatures with one hand using his weapon. Wan stood beside him, cheering with excitement. Sheng Yi nodded, all right. King Su's eyes lit up as she focused her energy. She looked around, seeing nothing. There were no other strange creatures nearby, so it was safe to begin collecting. Wan, wearing a mask and gloves, was ready. Okay, she used a needle to pierce the strange creature's body, drawing out its blood. As she examined the blood in the tube, she said the blood sample has a really high density, just like a level 7 strange creature. Sheng Yi smiled. The foundation of a powerful martial artist is their physical body. Every part of it is the best weapon, unlike those elite generals who are just trash. Sheng Yi turned away proudly, his back straight. He trained with weapons to improve his skills even further, pushing the limits of his physical strength, if it weren't for wanting to speed up the progress even more. Sheng Yi looked really cool, but he didn't even bother to use his sword. After all, the blood of these creatures was too filthy. Still, his sweet little sister was blunt with him, either help collect them or keep quiet. No one wanted to hear him bragging about himself like that. Sheng Yi pouted, looking grumpy. Huff. Then, Dong Sheng Yi went on a rampage, slaying the strange creatures one after another, making his way deeper into the abyss. With each swing of his weapon, a strange creature was destroyed. Wherever he went, the creatures fell. King Su watched Sheng Yi calmly take down the strange creatures in front of him. Normally, with a brother this strong, she should be happy, right? But instead, King Su felt bothered. Every time she thought about Lu Sheng possibly being beaten by him, it just made her more frustrated. Watching Sheng Yi handle the creatures with his sword was like watching a dance. This guy, King Su's eyes narrowed mischievously. Asterisk, it would be so nice if he got hurt in the abyss asterisk. Just then, an abyssal crack shot towards Sheng Yi. He quickly dodged. Sheng Yi shouted, King Su, why is there an abyssal crack here? You didn't even warn me. If it wasn't for my martial instincts kicking in, I would have been done for. King Su looked at him innocently. Sorry, I didn't see it. Besides, the abyssal crack is so small. Even if you hit it, you wouldn't die. Then, with an angry look, he said, at worst, I'll just be seriously injured. Sheng Yi broke into a cold sweat, his voice stuck in his throat. You. Sheng Yi was not willing to accept this. He muttered, "Humph, not even convincing." After that, Dong Sheng Yi nearly ran into the abyssal crack several times. He quickly dodged each time. Seeing the abyssal crack rush at him again, Sheng Yi felt a bit of heat rising inside him. "Dong King Su, what are you really doing?" Sheng Yi asked again, "Are you trying to get me killed?" King Su crossed her arms in front of her chest and calmly replied, "I don't see anything." Sheng Yi disagreed and pointed his finger at her. "Damn, it's clear you're trying to lure me into the abyssal crack. You insisted I go this way." But King Su remained completely unfazed. "Oh, is that so? I really don't see anything. Sorry, I'll pay more attention next time." Sheng Yi looked at her, his eyes filled with fear. It was terrifying, way too terrifying. This woman was still unmarried. Sheng Yi didn't feel happy about it, so he raised his hand to lecture King Su. "You're already being this awful to your family. You even dare to play tricks on your own brother. How much worse will it get in the future?" Wan Wan softly spoke to Sheng Yi. "Brother Dom, please take care of yourself." Sheng Yi took the opportunity to remind Wan Wan, in the future, when you fall in love, don't ever act like her. This woman has a dark and twisted heart. After hearing her brother complain, King Su was left speechless. On the 34th level of the abyss, Sheng Yi was still easily defeating the strange creatures. But then, an abyssal crack appeared once again, and this time, Sheng Yi was grazed by it. Sheng Yi's expression turned serious. "Dong King Su, stop playing around. If you cause me to get hurt, none of us will make it out of here." Even though they were surrounded by level 8 strange creatures, King Su could sense that something was off. "King Su, I really can't see it." Sheng Yi was at a loss for words. "You." King Su's face was covered in a thin layer of sweat. "I really can't see it this time." She crouched down and looked at the abyssal crack in the air. This crack had only just appeared, and it hadn't existed in this space before. This was becoming a bit of a problem. The abyssal crack, seeing the shocked expressions on Wan Wan and Sheng Yi as they stared at King Su, she asked, "Why are you two looking at me like that?" Wan Wan, astonished, asked, "Sister King Su, you just said you really can't see it this time, so does that mean you saw it before?" Sheng Yi felt a pang of displeasure. "Is this really your biological sister?" King Su quickly snapped, "Stop joking around. This is serious. New abyssal cracks are constantly appearing in the abyss, and usually that's a sign that a violent upheaval is about to happen." King Su looked at the two of them. "We better leave here as soon as possible. A level as abyss upheaval is not something to take lightly." Wan Wan hesitated, but she still had a few samples left to collect. Sheng Yi spoke up, "It's okay, Wan Wan, let's keep going." Sheng Yi still held a grudge. "Dong King Su, after everything you said, I can't believe a single word from you." King Su was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, on the 35th floor of the abyss, Lu Sheng effortlessly defeated the strange creature with just one arm. Using his equipment to handle the strange creature was easy, especially after seeing Hong Yu's team do it so many times. Suddenly, a sharp jolt shook Lu Shen's mind. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, frowning. "What's going on?" "I suddenly feel uneasy." His immortal cells were sending strange signals. Lu Shen thought, asterisk, this must mean something important. Either it's about me or someone close to me, asterisk. His eyes widened in shock. Danger. Lu Shen stood still, rubbing his head. Ha! He felt uncomfortable. The sensation, the signal from his immortal cells was not without reason. Lu Shen closed his eyes. This kind of feeling only happened when something happened to either him or someone crucial to him. But who could it be? Lu Shen activated his mental energy. Lu Shen clenched his fists and a light appeared in his mind. Martial arts training could continually uncover incredible treasures hidden deep within the human body. Luck and fate, in particular, were a small form of spiritual power within martial arts. It allowed him to sense danger, avoid threats, enter risky areas, and avoid direct confrontations with enemies he couldn't defeat. The 3 immortal cells within Lu Shen were enhancing this ability. Images of his loved ones appeared in his mind. They weren't as blurry as before, but he still couldn't pinpoint their exact source. The people that mattered most to him, his parents, his younger sister, Dong King Su, Qin Shaojun, Liu Kaiming, and Lin Zi. Lu Shen took out his phone and checked on each one. The problem was that the signal in the abyss was very weak, so he couldn't make calls or check anything. He hoped they were still nearby. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to reach them in time. Lu Shen continued on, quickly jumping across the abyss. Forget it. The Mystic Gold Mine was very close now, and he needed to make quick decisions. As he looked at the glittering golden veins of the rare gold before him, he knew he had arrived. He sprinted toward it, but his spiritual power couldn't detect any presence. This meant there were few practitioners of dark arts in this part of the abyss. After all, not every abyss was connected. Lu Shen's eyes brightened. He raised his lance, its power glowing brightly, and fired a beam of light. A strange creature charged out. Lu Shen's expression turned cold, and a dangerous look appeared in his eyes. Don't come near me. Then a spear struck and cut through the strange creature. Not far away, a group of people was taking the valuable items from the defeated strange creatures. One person noticed a sound and asked, "What's that noise? There's a strong, foul smell of blood coming this way. Is it from a strange creature, or is it from a person?" Someone else replied, "I don't know. Let's go check it out." Okay. Meanwhile, Qi Jin was battling an enormous strange creature. His expression was troubled as he thought, how can Dong Sheng Yi be so strong? His power isn't much greater than mine. Jai Jin thought as he struck down the strange creature. But I can't even take a single hit from him. Why ? Jai Jin was clearly frustrated. V should feel happy about taking down a level 8 strange creature by myself. He thought. So why am I still so angry? I really hate this feeling. Suddenly, an explosion echoed toward Jai Jin. Already irritated, he snapped, "Damn it, who's making all that noise in the abyss? I'm not in the mood and I'm really pissed off. You better wait for me. You're really asking for it now." The mystic gold shattered into pieces. Lu Sheng reached out and gathered them. The amount of mystic gold here was looking very promising. Behind him, strange creatures charged forward aggressively. Without needing to look, Lu Sheng quickly eliminated them with a single strike. This amount of mystic gold will definitely attract more strange creatures. I'll mine a little more, and that should be enough. Lu Sheng thought about the Hong Yu team. Since there were no servants this time, he'd have to carry everything back slowly on his own. Suddenly, his arm holding the staff trembled, and his body shook. The feeling from earlier squeezed his heart as if it had suddenly been gripped. This was somewhat important to him, which meant danger was near. He hadn't expected the warning to be so strong. It seemed like he wouldn't make it in time. Fine, I'll just take one piece, Lu Sheng muttered to himself. He picked up a large piece of mystic gold and turned to leave. But Lu Shen's sharp eyes caught something. The group of people who had been surrounding him earlier was now even closer, their gazes fixed greedily on him. His heart sank. Mystic gold. So much mystic gold. The crowd eagerly whispered, "This guy found a mystic gold vein. Hey, look." One person gazed at the mystic gold in Lu Shen's hand, mesmerized. Lu Sheng couldn't help but imagine a pack of dogs, eyes wide with hunger, looking up at their owner who was holding food. Their expressions were desperate and greedy. It reminded him of the stray dogs when he brought food back home. "All right, the rest of it is all yours," Lu Sheng said, his tone flat. "Now move out of the way." One of the men, holding a piece of mystic gold, smirked wickedly. "You're quite the joker, my friend." He reached down and touched a strange creature lying on the ground. "You've been making so much noise mining. Haven't you heard? The mystic gold will attract strange creatures. Didn't you know that? There will probably be a lot of them coming soon. How are we supposed to keep digging for the rest of the gold? Why don't you?" His eyes were sly as he divided a bit of the gem from the one in his hand. "We all easily became friends and safely made our way out together." Lu Sheng took a step forward. "What are you talking about? I can't hear you clearly." Lu Sheng's eyes lit up. "Say that again." The others became frightened, and one of them spoke up. "You were the one causing a noise earlier, which led to the strange creature being attracted, right?" The group immediately recognized the newcomer. It was Jai Jin. Ji Jin walked over, his eyes full of anger. Ji Jin smiled coldly. "Do you all know me?" The others quickly bowed and nodded in acknowledgement. "You're too modest, sir. You're ranked second on the elite general leaderboard, and everyone in the Eastern Military District knows you." Lu Sheng also spoke up. "Well, do you know me?" Jai Jin sneered. "What are you supposed to be? I don't know who you are, I don't care. All I know is you made noise and disturbed me, and I'm in a bad mood because of it." Ji Jin made his demand. "Either you hand over all the mystic gold you've mined, or you stay here with me." The others quickly said, "Looks like we're going to see Master Jai Jin's performance. Hopefully, he'll give us a little bit back." The mystic gold in Lu Shen's hand fell to the ground. Jai Jin smiled with satisfaction. "Kid, you really know your place. In that case, Lu Sheng cut him off, his voice cold. "Few people even have any real martial instinct, or is it just for show?" At that moment, Lu Shen's body seemed to ignite with fury. "Why can't you sense it?" he growled. "I'm seriously in a hurry and very angry." His eyes turned vicious. "Why do you always push me to the edge at moments like this?" Jai Jin's face went pale in shock. "You? What exactly are you?" he stammered. Lu Sheng remained calm, his voice steady. "Forget it. If you really want to die this badly, then." Suddenly, the aura around Lu Sheng shifted, becoming a powerful, overwhelming force. His eyes grew colder and sharper. "Then I'll make it happen for you." As soon as he finished speaking, The communication devices on the wrists of the tough-looking men shattered simultaneously, falling to the ground. They were taken completely by surprise, unable to understand what was happening. Panicking, they cried out, "Our communication devices! This is bad! Our communication devices!" The oppressive power around Lu Sheng intensified, causing everyone to feel as though they were being crushed. The men gasped in disbelief. What? What is this? Jin stood frozen, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. His eyes widened and he was at a loss for words. In the dark cave, only bones and glowing yellow gemstones could be seen. One of the men muttered, "We've already descended over 30 levels into the abyss. This abyssal crack just appeared recently." Another added, "The voices just now were Lin Wan and Dong King Su, who were talking to each other in a different part of the cave." Dong King Su said, "We can't go any further. It's really not possible." Dong King Su crossed her arms and stood watching Lin Wan. While she checked the test tubes in her backpack, she happily listened to Lin Wan's words. Lin Wan replied, yes, you're right. I've already collected quite a few samples." After inspecting the test tubes, Lin Wan put her backpack back on and said to Dong Shengyi, who was standing in front, "It's time to head back." "Hey, Dong," Lin Wan called out, noticing that Dong Shengyi was still standing there, not moving or responding. She grew a little confused and called out again, "Dong, do you hear me?" Dong Shengyi remained lost in thought, standing frozen in place. Lin Wan tried again, "Hello, Dong." At that moment, Dong King Su walked over and patted Dong Shengyi on the shoulder. She called his name once more, Dong Shengyi. Only then did Dong Shengyi snap out of his trance. He turned to look at Dong King Su, offering an awkward smile, and said, "Haha, what's up? I was just thinking about something and didn't pay attention to what you guys were saying." Dong King Su furrowed her brows and repeated what she had said earlier. "I told you we can go back now. New abyssal cracks keep appearing on these levels." Dong Shengyi seemed to disagree with her idea and responded, "Ha, but the truth is that the entire journey has shown there hasn't been any abyssal violence like you said." Dong King Su still wasn't convinced and replied, "But I've always felt something was strange." Before she could finish, Dong Shengyi, who was no longer interested in hearing her out, waved his hand and cut her off, saying, "All right, Dong King Su." He then gave a clear order, shutting down any room for argument. "Your job is just to scout ahead. Leave the strange creatures to me." Dong King Su was taken aback by his words. Without bothering to hold back, she shot back, "Who do you think you are?" Dong Shengyi's face darkened as he replied, "Don't think your level 6 martial skills give you the right to judge my limits. Even if an abyssal outbreak really happens, I have the ability to get us all out of here." The tension from the conversation made Dong King Su realize she wouldn't be able to convince him, so she decided not to argue further and simply said, "Fine, I understand." Lin Wan couldn't hold back and defended Dong King Su. "Dong, you're being too harsh. Sister King Su is just worried about us getting into danger." Dong Shengyi scoffed, not agreeing, and sneered, "Ha, if she was really worried about me, she wouldn't have done what she did earlier." Dong Shengyi looked at the light coming from the cave ahead and ordered the two people with him. "We're probably still missing a few samples of the level 8 strange creatures. Let's move on, collect enough, and then head back." His eyes glowed red, and his face was full of ambition as he smiled and said, "I can feel it. This is the moment for me to break through the martial saint." Suddenly, Dong Shengyi grabbed Lin Wan's shoulders and shook her forcefully, saying, "We cannot fail." Lin Wan was both startled and a little scared by his sudden action. She blurted out, "Ha." At that moment, Dong Shengyi's expression became wild and terrifying. His forehead bulged with veins, as if he'd lost all reason. He shouted loudly, "We cannot asterisk." Then, without another word, he turned around and continued walking forward. Lin Wan, still shaken, called out nervously, Brother Dong. She quickly turned to comfort Dong King Su, saying, "Don't be mad, King Su. Maybe Brother Dong didn't mean it like that." Dong King Su replied, "I'm not angry. We've been like family since we were kids. I won't let something like this bother me." But her eyes showed a hint of concern as she said, "I just feel." With a serious expression, Dong King Su asked, Wan, do you feel something's off?" Lin Wan, confused, asked, "What's wrong?" Dong King Su voiced her thoughts, expressing that the current behavior of Dong Shengyi seemed somewhat strange. Dong King Su outlined Dong Shengyi's recent actions. For instance, when they first entered the abyss, Dong Shengyi would never stray more than 5 meters away from the group. Dong King Su continued, "Moreover, we're now on the 34th level, where the dangers are tenfold compared to when we first entered the abyss. Yet now he's already far away from us, and he hasn't even noticed that we've stopped following him. Frowning, Dong King Su stated, "That's why I suspect." Dong King Su voiced her own speculation. Dong Sheng Yi. It seems like he wants to go on alone, heading deeper into the abyss. On Lu Shen's side, Ji Jin had been effortlessly defeated by Lu Shen. The overwhelming power left Jia Jin with no chance to fight back. Jia Jin's face twisted in agony. With a wave of Lu Shen's hand, Ji Jin's body crashed heavily to the ground, causing a loud explosion. The burst of energy was so dazzling and intense that the group of rugged onlookers couldn't bear to look directly at it. As the blinding light dissipated, the bald-headed man stood in shock, staring at the scene before him. The tough guys stood frozen in fear, their mouths agape in shock as they looked at Jia Jin lying motionless on the ground, his body badly beaten and hard to look at. The bald man said, "This is Jia Jin, very brave, arrogant, and even ranked second in the military district. Yet he was killed by some mysterious young guy we don't even know. He didn't have any chance to fight back. If this gets out, it'll probably shake the entire Eastern Military District." Lu Shen's face remained cold and dangerous as he called out to the bald man, causing him to jump in surprise. After witnessing Lu Shen's terrifying power, the bald man finally understood fear. The bald man dropped to his knees in front of Lu Shen, repeatedly banging his head on the ground while begging, Sir, please don't get mad. If there's anything, just speak slowly. Don't kill us. Please, sir, we were wrong. Terrified, the bald man was so scared he wet himself. In his panic, he thought to himself, I'm definitely going to die this time. The communication watch is broken, and before half a day passes, we'll be eaten alive by the strange creature in the abyss. The more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. Are we going to be stuck here forever? No, please, I don't want to die yet. But Lu Shen remained calm, saying, "All right, I'm less angry now. I'm not such a bad person after all." The bald man's face lit up with relief as he thought, "Oh, I'm safe now. He and the group behind him looked up at Lu Shen with joy. The bald man clasped his hands together in gratitude and began to say, thank you, sir, But before he could finish his sentence, a flash of light sliced past his ear. He froze, unable to process what had just happened. A moment later, one of his ears dropped to the ground. Blood poured from the wound as he clutched the side of his head, screaming in pain, Lu Shen leaned in close, his face cold and emotionless and warned in a chilling tone, remember my face. Next time, you better fear me. Got it? Terrified, the bald man trembled and stammered, I understand. I will, The entire group, shaking with fear, dropped to their knees and cried out, we understand. We will, Tears streamed down the bald man's face as he promised desperately, I swear, I'll never forget what you look like, Suddenly, something clicked in his mind. His eyes widened and he shouted, wait, The realization hit him. Pointing at Lu Shen's retreating figure, he yelled, remember now, He finally recognized him. His voice quivered as he said, that's Lu Shen. He's ranked 4th on the Elite General Leaderboard, the top-tier Demon King who's been making waves in Combat Zone 9 recently. Confusion and fear overtook him as he muttered to himself, a combat power of 12.5 stars. This doesn't make sense. A man with long hair, still in disbelief, exclaimed, "No way. How could it be 12.5 stars? Think about it. Dong Sheng Yi defeated Ji Jin in a single move, and Lu Sheng did the same. No wonder Dong Sheng Yi swept through the entire top 10 of the Elite General rankings." He continued, but he never fought Lu Sheng. Turns out they're both powerhouses on the same level. Another man, clearly intrigued, added with anticipation the days of Dong Sheng Yi strutting around like he owns the Eastern Military District might finally be over. This is going to be exciting to watch. Suddenly, the group seemed to remember Ji Jin. The bald man who had just lost an ear jolted, pointing at Jia Jin as he shouted in panic, "Quick check on Jia Jin. Is he even still alive?" The nearby crowd instinctively turned to look. Jia Jin was lying motionless on the ground, the area around him forming a large crater with dirt and rocks scattered everywhere. His companion quickly rushed to his side, placed a hand over his chest to check his condition, and said, "That person held back. They missed by just a few inches, barely grazing your heart. You'll be fine." Jin lay there, his body weak and drained, his face twisted in pain. Slowly, he opened his eyes, which were unfocused, almost lifeless. He hesitated, then weakly asked, I'm not dead. At that moment, Jin gazed up at the sky, and images of Lu Sheng and Dong Sheng Yi flashed through his mind. He thought to himself, Lu Sheng, Dong Sheng Yi, how are they so powerful? Ha! Meanwhile, Lu Sheng was walking, hands in his pockets, muttering to himself. He had already made up his mind. He couldn't bring himself to be as ruthless as Guk Swan, someone who could kill without a second thought as easily as cutting grass. Just then, Lu Sheng stopped dead in his tracks, his face showing deep surprise as if he had sensed something was terribly wrong. He placed a hand over his chest, feeling the discomfort with suspicion, then spoke to himself. The sense of danger is getting stronger. I can't wait any longer. In that moment, a mysterious green light flickered in Lu Sheng's eyes. With a doubtful expression, he muttered, Hoog is in danger. Could it be? At the same time, Lin Wanwan was doing everything. She could have stopped Dong Sheng Yi. She desperately reached for his hand and pleaded with him. Mr. Dong, we can't go any deeper. It's too dangerous. Suddenly, Dong Sheng Yi's expression changed. His eyes turned fierce, glowing with a purple light. Coldly, he jerked his hand away from Lin Wanwan. She was completely stunned by his reaction. Dong King-su, seeing this, yelled at Lin Wanwan, Wanwan, get out of the way. Dong King-su quickly took a stance, raising both hands as if preparing to perform some kind of spell. Immediately, many pink beams of light appeared, conjured by her. These beams charged toward Dong Sheng Yi. He seemed to sense the attack coming from behind him, and, with a flick of his power, sent the beams crashing back in the opposite direction. Once everything settled, Dong Sheng Yi turned to face Dong King-su, his gaze cold and terrifying, his eyes burning red. Dong King-su, are you really trying to get yourself killed? Everyone thought Dong King-su would be scared, but she wasn't. Instead, she boldly marched up to Dong Sheng Yi and decisively said, Dong Sheng Yi, we need to go back now. Wanwan's sample is complete. Standing nearby, Lin Wanwan hesitated, but then awkwardly added, Oh yeah, that's right. Mr. Dom, we really should leave. I don't want to stay here anymore. Dong Sheng Yi was left speechless, unable to respond, and stood still for a moment. A little while later, Dong Sheng Yi still decided to move forward. He turned around and walked ahead, speaking to Lin Wanwan and Dong King-su. You two should head back first. Lin Wanwan and Dong King-su could only watch in silence, feeling helpless. Dong Sheng Yi continued walking deeper into the cave and added, I really want to see the deepest part inside. He stopped in front of a strange black smoke and said, I feel like something is calling me. The deeper he went, the more his expression changed. His eyes grew dark and he smiled eerily as he looked ahead, saying, Maybe there's something there I've been searching for all this time. Suddenly, two deadly red mist-like glows appeared in his eyes. He grinned widely, his smile twisted and unnerving, and said, The ultimate martial arts. Dong King-su was startled and ran up to him, shouting, Stop dreaming, Dong Sheng Yi. Even if there really is some ultimate martial arts, it wouldn't be in some deep, creepy place. You've been hypnotized. But no matter what Dong King-su said, Dong Sheng Yi didn't seem to care. He just kept laughing in that strange way, staring ahead. He answered, I'm sure it's there. Suddenly, a black smoke in front of him emitted a dark red glow. He said again, It definitely is. Dong King-su felt utterly helpless. She put her hand in worry and muttered, He's been possessed. Lin Wanwan, anxious and frantic, shouted at Dong Sheng Yi, Dong, what do we do now? At this moment, Lin Wanwan was becoming even more panicked, not knowing what to do. She held her head in her hands, closed her eyes, and shouted, We can't go back and call for help. Dong King-su remained calm and replied, Stay here, I'll go wake him up. Her gaze was determined and her voice firm as she added, We must pull him back. Before she even finished speaking, Dong King-su was already moving at lightning speed, rushing toward Dong Sheng Yi. She shouted, Come back. Lin Wanwan expected to be completely terrified, but instead, when she saw Dong King-su's determined energy, she too felt a surge of resolve. Using her own speed, she ran after Dong King-su and shouted, I want to help too. Dong King-su suddenly paused as if she was about to do something. Her expression became very serious, and with a swift wave of her hands, she performed a spell. In the blink of an eye, the spell shot out and hit a rock formation. The rock immediately collapsed, blocking the path of Dong Sheng Yi. Seeing this, Lin Wanwan seized the opportunity. With quick reflexes, she dashed forward and positioned herself in front of Dong Sheng Yi. She stretched out her arms, her face set in a firm expression, and shouted, Mr. Dong, if you don't turn back now, I'll tell my mom when we get back, and I'll make her punish you. It seemed that Lin Wan's words had no effect on Dong Shengyi. He completely ignored everything she said. Then he did something that made Lin Wan's expression turn serious as well. Stay right there. It turned out that Dong Shengyi had used his power. With just one kick, he easily shattered the large stone blocking their path. His expression remained terrifying, grinning wickedly, his eyes glowing red. He pointed forward and said, "Go ahead, but remember, Lin Jiang Yu's way is only meant for her. It will never lead to success for you. Your path is ahead of you." Lin Wan felt crushed by his words. She lowered her head and muttered, "It's over. It's really over. Normally, Brother Dong treats my mother like a goddess, and now he's saying something like that. He's really lost his mind." Then she turned to Dong King-su with worry, asking, "Does this mean we just have to stand here and watch him fall?" Dong King-su lowered her gaze to the ground. She stayed silent for a moment as if deep in thought before she finally said, "There's another way." Lin Wan's face lit up with surprise. Huh? Without wasting any time, Dong King-su moved quickly toward Dong Shengyi. In an unexpected move, she rushed up behind him, wrapped her arms around him, and said in a soft, almost childlike voice, "Big brother." Dong King-su clung tightly to Dong Shengyi, not letting go. Dong Shengyi, shocked by her actions, turned to look at her and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" Immediately, Dong King-su looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. She gazed at him with a hurt expression and said, big brother, don't you recognize me?" Seeing her like this, Dong Shengyi's eyes shifted from red to their normal white color. He stared at her with a puzzled look, hesitating before asking, "Am I?" Dong King-su, noticing that her tactic was working, continued to speak in a pitiful voice, her eyes still brimming with tears, and said, "Big brother, this place is dangerous. It's full of traps." She paused before adding, "Lin Wan, the only daughter of the legendary martial saint, has already completed her mission. You shouldn't go any further." When Dong Shengyi heard this, cold sweat immediately began to form on his forehead, and his face showed signs of realization. He shook his head frantically, trying to regain his composure. Dong King-su kept up her sorrowful tone, resting her head gently against his back and softly saying, "We need you to protect us and help us get back." At these words, it seemed Dong Shengyi finally understood. He grabbed his head, grimacing and grinding his teeth, his face full of frustration and self-blame. "Damn it! What the hell is wrong with me? How could I have led you all here?" Before he even finished speaking, Dong Shengyi suddenly seemed to realize something else. He abruptly exclaimed, "That's right. It seems like someone keeps calling you over there." Just as he started to return to his senses, his gaze grew distant again. With a dreamy expression, he smiled and said, "There's something over there that you're really desperate for." At that moment, a burst of flame erupted from Dong Shengyi's body. The fire quickly formed a protective barrier around him, and this barrier immediately sent Dong King-su flying away. She screamed, "Ah!" Thrown far back, Dong King-su cried out in fear, "Big brother, no." Suddenly, a massive mouth appeared from behind her, coming from something unknown. Dong King-su, seeing this, gasped in confusion. Before she could react, the giant mouth swiftly swallowed her whole. Once it had devoured her, the creature quickly burrowed into the ground, disappearing before Dong Shengyi's stunned eyes. Lin Wan, horrified, screamed in panic, "Sister King-su!" Dong Shengyi snapped back to reality. Seeing his sister's fate, his face twisted with rage as he shouted, "Dong King-su!" After swallowing her, the creature quickly retreated into the earth, leaving behind a deep hole and an air of bewilderment among the group. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng, weapon in hand, remained on high alert, his eyes scanning the area carefully. Suddenly, a strange feeling washed over him. His heart inexplicably began to race, and his head felt a bit dizzy, causing him to freeze for a moment. He quickly stood up and turned in one direction. Sweat broke out on his forehead, and his face filled with worry as he spoke in a nervous tone. Something very important to me just left quickly, and I didn't notice. This isn't good." Without wasting another second, Lu Sheng pulled out his phone and called his mother. His voice trembled with concern as he muttered, "Please pick up." The connection went silent and no signals came through, making the situation even more dangerous. Just when he was starting to panic, the phone finally picked up. "Hello," came a voice on the other end. Lu Sheng quickly pressed the phone to his ear and asked urgently, "Mom, how are you and Dad? Everything's okay, right? I just wanted to check." "Okay, good." Hearing that his parents were safe, his tone calmed down a bit. He added, "What about King? Is she at school?" "All right, thanks." After confirming the situation with his parents and little sister, he dialed Dong King-su's number. The phone's automated response came back. "Sorry, the number you're calling is currently unavailable." Lu Sheng's face tightened with worry. He stared at the phone, deep in thought. It's her. But it's normal for the signal to drop when she's in a military zone. Sometimes when you go into places like the Abyss, the signal is weak, but that doesn't mean something's happened. As he was trying to think through all the possibilities, the sudden ring of his phone startled him, breaking his train of thought. It was Qin Xiaojun calling. Lu Sheng calmly answered the phone, asking, "Hello, what's going on, Qin Xiaojun?" In sharp contrast to his calmness, Qin Xiaojun shouted in a panic, "Lu Sheng, where are you right now?" He replied, "I." Before Lu Sheng could finish, Qin Xiaojun's voice grew louder on the other end. "Something's happened. Hurry back! Dong Qingsu is in trouble." Lu Sheng was caught off guard by the news. His face immediately changed to one of shock and his emerald green eyes brightened. He steadied his emotions and asked, "What happened?" "Tell me slowly." Qin Xiaojun quickly responded, "What? The SS level abyss they entered has cracked open and there's been an uprising. It's a level 10 high as possible." Lu Sheng said, "The 7th combat zone? I'm heading back right now." Without waiting for a response, he hung up the phone. His eyes filled with anger as an orange energy aura surrounded him. Lu Sheng gathered his strength, slammed his foot on the ground, and in an instant, he shot off at lightning speed, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a trace of his energy. Running at a superhuman pace, powered by his strength, Lu Sheng spoke in a firm tone, "Dong Qingsu, wait for me." Heaving a silent vow to save her no matter what. Meanwhile, at the 7th combat zone, near the SS-level abyss, a group of soldiers surrounded a deep pit. The chief, holding a communication device, said, "We need reinforcements from combat zones 6 and 8. It's a level 10 uprising, and only God knows how much damage it will cause over the coming years. We can't handle this alone." The voice on the other end of the line replied, and now there were still several teams inside the abyss. The chief, with a worried expression, said, 8 teams in total. This includes Lin Wanwan's team and Dong Shengyi, the 3rd disciple of the Super Martial Saint, who still haven't returned. What should we do? After thinking for a moment, the voice on the other end responded, "I'm giving you full authority over Sector 7. Gather all the elite generals you can and head down into the abyss to find them. If anything goes wrong, our military can't handle the wrath of a Martial Saint-level storm." The chief grimaced and replied, "Yes, sir." He turned to the soldiers behind him and said, "This mission is going to be a life or death situation. Team 2, go ahead and gather the others." He raised his hand and continued, "Team 1, we're heading straight down." Suddenly, a soldier with 3 large scratch marks near his eye pointed to a deep pit ahead and shouted, "Report, Chief. Dong Shengyi and the others are down there." Hearing this, the chief immediately turned toward the pit. Dong Shengyi, carrying Lin Wanwan on his back, was quickly climbing upward. As he climbed, he used his sword to fend off the monsters reaching out to attack them. The chief yelled, "That's them. Hurry, get over there and help." The 2 soldiers rushed over and pulled them to safety, fighting off the monsters. One soldier shouted, "Pull them up quickly." A few moments later, Dong Shengyi and Lin Wanwan were safely brought up. Dong Shengyi collapsed onto the ground, his hands trembling, his face blank and exhausted. He panted heavily, trying to steady himself. Lin Wanwan sat behind him, holding her face in her hands, crying in deep sorrow. The chief smiled warmly and stepped forward, saying, "Thankfully, both of you are fine. If not, we would have had no choice but to risk our lives and charge into the abyss ourselves." Dong Shengyi stayed silent, his eyes wide as he stared at the ground, seemingly lost in thought about what had just happened. The chief, unaware of Dong Shengyi's strange behavior, continued, as expected from the 3rd disciple of the legendary martial saint. "Not only could you make it back safely from the abyss, but you also managed to save 3 elite squads of general-level explorers." He turned around and glanced at the soldiers behind him. Suddenly, Dong Shengyi dropped to his knees. Lin Wanwan hurried over, calling out to him, "Dong, are you okay?" The chief, standing beside him, was also taken aback. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. Dong Shengyi kept his head down, muttering to himself, "It's me." His whole body trembled, and his face was filled with torment. In a voice full of regret, he said, "It's me. I'm the one who hurt her." One of the soldiers standing nearby whispered to the chief. It seemed that they had entered the abyss together, but one person hadn't made it back. The chief's eyes widened in surprise. His face turned angry as he shouted, "What? Who? Why didn't you say something sooner?" The soldier, sweating slightly, replied, "Her identity is a bit special. She's Dong Shengyi's younger sister." The image of Dong Qingsu appeared with an imposing presence. He continued, saying, "I am a colonel officer of the 9th War Zone." The chief let out a breath, releasing the anxiety that had built up inside him. He then calmly thought to himself, that scared me for a second. Turns out he's not that big of a deal. People die on the battlefield all the time. Even a 7th level martial artist faces danger regularly. So what's the big deal about a mere lieutenant colonel? Dong Sheng Yi will be fine after a few days. After all, he's the disciple of a martial saint. This is just part of his emotional training. Suddenly, a blinding light appeared in the sky and a figure holding a spear shot down toward them. An explosion rang out, and the blinding light forced everyone to cover their eyes with one hand while using the other to block the wind from the blast. Lu Sheng, his eyes glowing brightly, coldly demanded, "Where is Dong Sheng Ye?" As Lu Sheng emerged from the white smoke, his body was surrounded by a powerful aura of orange and deep blue energy. The pressure he radiated left everyone in shock. His appearance was terrifying, sending chills through the air. The chief shouted, "Who is this? Even a seasoned 11-star general like me is shaken just by a glance at him." Flame surrounded Lu Sheng as his blue eyes lit up. He lost his composure and shouted angrily, "Dong Sheng Yi, come out here." Dong Sheng Yi froze at the sound of his name and stared at him in confusion. Lu Sheng reached out toward Dong Sheng Yi, but in Dong Sheng Yi's eyes, a massive hand with overwhelming power was advancing, seemingly to crush him. Lu Sheng grabbed Dong Sheng Yi by the collar, causing him to flinch and widen his eyes in shock. Lu Sheng pressed his face, filled with killing intent, close to Dong Sheng Yi's and demanded, "Where is Dong King Su? Tell me." Dong Sheng Yi, still stunned, hesitated before answering. She. From behind them, Lin Wanwan trembled, sobbing softly, "Sister King Su. Asterisk? Who asterisk?" Seeing their reactions, Lu Sheng quickly understood the situation. He released his grip on Dong Sheng Yi's collar and stood above him, staring down with an expression that could kill. Coldly, Lu Sheng said, "You were the one who brought Dong King Su in there, but now you can't get her out. Are you really just going to walk away from this, even if you are her brother?" Lu Sheng turned around, his head lowered as he walked step by step toward the pit. He said, "Dong Sheng Yi, didn't you want to prove your martial arts? Wait for me to bring King Su back." He lifted his head, his handsome face illuminated by a sudden spark in his eyes. His expression darkened with anger as he added, "I'll personally break your martial spirit." With that, Lu Sheng rushed toward the deep pit, a surge of green energy radiating around him. Suddenly, a massive shadow appeared in front of him, blocking his path. It was a long, terrifying creature with a huge mouth full of sharp teeth, and it lunged at him. Despite the danger, Lu Sheng didn't hesitate. He kept his speed, charging straight at the creature. His eyes locked onto it, his face cold and intense. He gathered energy into his weapon and declared, "I'll handle this." With a powerful strike, Lu Sheng cleaved through the creature, splitting it in two. He shouted, "My way!" The monster's blood splattered everywhere as it fell to the ground defeated. A soldier watching from above, stunned, exclaimed, "One strike took down an 8th-level strange creature. Who is this guy?" Without pausing, Lu Sheng continued his descent, ignoring the chatter above. The chief, watching in panic, muttered, "A level 10 abyssal outbreak of SA rank? Escaping from that is nearly impossible, yet he dares to dive in? Is he looking for death? This is insane." Dong Sheng Yu was stunned by what he had just witnessed. He thought to himself, "In my life, I've seen many people die courageously, but I've never seen anyone so sure of themselves without a hint of hesitation like him." He looked at Lu Sheng below and wondered, asterisk, is he the man Dong King Su likes, asterisk? A moment later, on the 5th level of the abyss, a massive monster lunged at Lu Sheng with its mouth wide open. He struck it hard with his weapon, and in an instant, the creature vanished into thin air. Lu Sheng looked up at where the monster had been and said, "I quickly checked Dong King Su's personal data. Her life signs aren't showing any signs of stopping. This means she's just trapped in the abyss, not dead." He gripped his weapon tightly and moved swiftly forward. In a low voice, he murmured, "But if this drags on, we can't be sure of anything. I need to act fast. Dong King Su, wait for me. I will find you." Meanwhile, in a place filled with slimy liquid surrounded by sharp spikes, Dong King Su lay inside the stomach of the monster. She was protected by a green aura that radiated from her tightly clenched hand. Slowly, she opened her eyes, weakly whispering, "I'm still alive." She looked at the gem in her hand, which was glowing with a powerful aura, and said, "It was it that saved me." She pushed herself up with her hands, slowly sitting up. Dong King Su placed her hand on her head as she recalled the moment when the monster had swallowed her. "The last thing I remember is being swallowed by the strange creature," she said. Dong King Su stood up and started walking, her voice filled with doubt as she said, "Could this be inside its stomach?" She kept walking, unaware that a mass of tentacles was slowly creeping toward her. One of the tentacles wrapped around her leg. In an instant, more tentacles shot forward, grabbing her. They coiled around her body, causing her to cry out in surprise. The slimy tentacles now crawling over her body made her shiver as she said, "Ah, these are the tentacles inside the strange creature's stomach. A massive tentacle with a large, spiky mouth came toward her. It lunged at her, aiming to devour her, and Dong Qingsu, terrified, shut her eyes tightly. Suddenly, the gem in her hand emitted golden light. A powerful surge of golden energy radiated from it, causing the tentacles to disintegrate into thin air. The golden energy enveloped Dong Qingsu, forming a protective shield around her. She stared at the pendant in her hand, watching as its light slowly dimmed. She looked at it and said, "The mental shield from this pendant actually blocked that malicious attack, but its energy has dropped significantly. If I'm attacked again, I might not make it out." Dong Qingsu looked down at her clothes, which were smoking, and gasped in shock. This isn't good. The fluid from this demon is corrosive. Her clothes were covered in holes, large and small, scattered all over. She quickly stood up and said, "I need to find a way out of here fast." She glanced around and added, "The air inside this creature's body is filthy." Shaking, Dong Qingsu focused her mental energy into her hands and said, "If I weren't a level 6 martial artist, I'd be suffocating by now. I can't keep going like this for much longer." She directed her power at the creature's red flesh and shouted, "I have to break through its skin." A moment later, the smoke around her attack began to dissipate, but the spot she hit remained unchanged, not even a scratch. Furious, she gathered more energy into her hands and yelled, "Damn it," again. Her powerful cries repeated over and over. After a while, the creature's stomach remained unaffected. All her attacks seemed completely useless. Exhausted and desperate, she whispered, "Why is this happening?" With a heavy sigh, she collapsed, her head bowed as tears fell. "Looks like this is where I'll die," she said, her voice trembling. Her eyes were full of sorrow as she added, "It's not that I'm afraid or unwilling to accept it." Her breathing was a bit rapid, and she hesitated as she spoke, but there was still a sense of regret in her voice. Suddenly, her phone fell from her pocket and dropped to the ground, the screen lighting up. She turned her head to look at the phone. Her breathing became more frantic. Her body was drenched in sweat as she picked the phone up, her hands shaking as she stared at it. Dong Qingsu searched for Lu Sheng's number in her contacts. His image appeared on the screen. Her trembling hand tried to hold the phone steady. Her blue eyes sparkled and tears began to flow steadily down her cheeks. She thought to herself, "There's no air, asterisk." A tear slid down her cheek and her lips were dry. Her breathing became weaker. She thought, "It's not enough anymore, asterisk." The phone slipped from her hand and fell. Dong Qingsu collapsed, helpless, silently calling out his name, Lu Sheng, On her phone's screen was a message thread with Lu Sheng. He had sent her a message reminding her to stay safe. She was in the middle of typing a reply. "Lu Sheng, I like you." But she never finished the sentence. Before she could send it, she passed out. The tentacles, seeing her motionless, moved forward to try to grab her. In her heart, she thought, "Such a pity." Tentacles wrapped around her legs, then slowly moved upward, reaching her waist. Dong Qingsu thought, "Maybe." The tentacles continued to tighten around her body, lifting her higher. She thought, "In the next life." More and more tentacles appeared, wrapping tightly around her head. Dong Qingsu thought, "Maybe I'll have the chance to be with him." In the evening, deep within an abyss surrounded by towering cliffs, a dragon-like monster charged forward ready to attack. Lu Sheng leaped into the air, delivering a powerful strike to the monster's head. It cried out in pain and collapsed to the ground. After dealing with the creature, he quickly took off and said, "The necklace I gave Dong Qingsu before contains a seed of my spiritual energy, kind of like a tracking device. But right now, I can't sense its location. It must still be too far." Lu Sheng reached behind him, gripping his weapon and prepared for battle. A massive surge of energy surrounded him. He spoke calmly, "So that means if I just destroy this entire abyss, I'll be done." The monsters, sensing their prey, charged toward him. Seeing them rush in, Lu Sheng landed smoothly, steadying himself with his left foot as he braced for impact. Flames and large chunks of ice appeared around him. Lu Sheng activated his unique skill. The ice shot out from his position, speeding toward the monsters. In an instant, their legs were frozen, leaving them confused and immobile. Lu Sheng's eyes glowed bright red, full of menace. He frowned and muttered, "Die, you worthless trash." With a surge of immense power, he sent the monsters flying far back. He took a fighting stance, ready to strike again, and shouted, "Path of destruction." His eyes widened as he charged at the monsters, his voice cold and final, "Die." In an instant, he swept through the horde of monsters, a massive blaze consuming them. Lu Sheng leaped into the air, slicing through the neck of a large creature, sending blood splattering everywhere. He shouted, "This is still too slow." Lu Sheng's eyes seemed to burn with fire as he muttered softly, "I need to get to her right away." Laying hard on the ground, Lu Sheng gathered his strength in his legs and launched himself high into the air, leaving the monsters stunned. He drew his weapon back, channeling power into it with his hand, and shouted, asterisk, asterisk, divine force of the sacred technique, asterisk, asterisk. With a powerful throw, he hurled his weapon into the midst of the monsters. In the blink of an eye, their heads turned to ash. The weapon continued to speed forward, slicing through everything in its path before slamming into the ground with a deafening crash. The impact left a deep crater, scattering rocks and debris everywhere. Lu Sheng slowly approached the crater he had just created. He stood silently at its edge, gazing down and thinking, asterisk, she's right beneath me, asterisk. Without hesitation, he jumped into the hole, whispering to himself, asterisk, wait for me, asterisk. On the 15th floor, Lu Sheng dashed quickly from one wall to the other, leaving behind only streaks of golden light. On the 20th floor, then the 40th, he began to slow down, focusing on his surroundings. His eyes glowed as he murmured, it feels like I'm getting closer. Clenching his hand into a fist, Lu Sheng stared at the wall in front of him and declared loudly, asterisk, asterisk, she's just behind this wall, asterisk, asterisk. With a powerful strike, he punched the wall, sending chunks of stone flying in all directions. Startled, he froze as he caught sight of what lay beyond. A grotesque monster with a long tongue and razor-sharp iron teeth let out a series of raspy, guttural hisses. It gazed down from above at the small figure that had just appeared. In an instant, Lu Sheng recognized the creature. It was asterisk, former mollusk asterisk. His eyes widened with fury as he shouted, Dong King Su's energy is fading fast. Could it be? Damn it. The asterisk, former mollusk asterisk, opened its massive mouth, gathering energy to launch an attack. A powerful surge of energy shot toward him. Lu Sheng stood his ground, watching the glowing sphere of power hurtling his way. Clenching his fist tightly and focusing all his strength in his palms, he roared, you're the one who hurt her. With a swift and forceful strike, he shattered the energy blast rushing toward him. Then, leaping high into the air, he closed the distance to the creature. The asterisk, former mollusk asterisk, shocked that its attack had been neutralized so easily, widened its eyes in disbelief. Hovering just in front of its face, Lu Sheng demanded, she's inside you, isn't she? Before the creature could recover from its surprise, he struck it hard in the mouth, fury burning in his voice as he shouted, trash, give her back to me. The sheer force of his attack split the massive beast in two. Inside its body, Dong King Su was bound tightly by its writhing tentacles. A faint golden light flickered, catching her attention. Weakly, she struggled to open her eyes, whispering, that light. Her eyes filled with sorrow as she slowly closed them again, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Softly, she murmured, so this is death coming to take me away. A loud shout echoed, Dong King Su. The sound made her open her eyes. Each of the tentacles that had surrounded her was blasted away by Lu Sheng's power. The creature, resembling a giant worm, was split in two, causing Dong King Su to fall. She looked around confused and asked, what is this? What's going on? Before she could gather her thoughts, a hand reached out and gently pulled her into an embrace. Lu Sheng smiled warmly at her and said, Dong King Su, I'm here to take you home. As she lay in his arms, a sudden blush spread across her face. She looked at him, her eyes shining with happiness, and called out, Lu Sheng. Dong King Su stared at his handsome, gentle face and repeated his name, Lu Sheng. Hearing her call him, Lu Sheng smiled and said, let's go home. Above the abyss, countless monsters began crawling up from the depths, sending everyone into a panic. One person shouted, this is bad, more and more strange creatures are rising up. The chief, holding a walkie-talkie, spoke loudly, the situation is unstable. Everyone retreat back to the base. At the military base, someone remarked, Lu Sheng, the 19-year-old lieutenant general, defeated Lu Meiying with a single strike. His combat power is at least 15 stars, making him one of the strongest martial artists we've ever seen. The chief looked at Lu Sheng's profile with astonishment and exclaimed, he's one of our own, from the Eastern Military District. A soldier said, oh my god, this is truly one of a kind. The chief widened his eyes as if he couldn't believe the information he was hearing. He stared at Lu Sheng's data on the display and said, but just now, he risked his life to attack an SS-level abyss creature right in front of us without any time to stop him. This is bad. He glanced behind him and asked, is there any way to track his whereabouts now? A brown-haired soldier standing behind him responded, no, we can't. When he was in the abyss, he deliberately destroyed all the communication devices. The brown-haired soldier sighed and added, even if we do find his location, with the strange creatures going wild, I wouldn't recommend sending anyone in for a rescue mission. He cursed loudly. Shit, what a waste. The chief, feeling helpless, rubbed his forehead and muttered, damn it. The chief slammed his hand on the table in frustration and shouted, that worthless disciple of the martial saint and that martial saint's poisonous daughter. Because of them, the Eastern Military District is suffering losses, including an elite general, a true talent who could have qualified to break through to the ninth rank. Honestly, if it weren't for their family connections, I would have dealt with them myself by now. The brown-haired soldier, sweating a little, chuckled nervously and said, "You might want to keep it down. The leader might not be able to beat him." The chief frowned and said, "Huh, can't I even imagine it for a second?" He crossed his arms and looked at the soldiers, asking, "All right, so what do you all think? Could we use a warhead to blow up the strange creatures and go in to rescue him?" The brown-haired soldier stood behind the chief, stroking his chin and said, "That's not going to work, leader. The higher-ups won't agree. After using the shell, the affected area will be vast and the consequences will be even more severe. Right now, there are 9 SSS-level abysses around the world, and more than half of them were created by countries using nuclear weapons." The chief slammed his hands down on the table in frustration and shouted, "This way won't work, and that way won't either." He continued, "I don't care. We can't just stand by and watch the hopes of the military district vanish. I'll take full responsibility. Even if it's risky, we have to try. Before the chief could finish, a soldier rushed in shouting, "Chief, there's been a change in the situation." He hurried into the tent and repeated, "Chief, there's been a change." The chief looked up at him and asked, "What? What happened?" The soldier grinned and replied, "All the defensive lines have reported that strange creatures on the battlefield are starting to head back toward the abyss cracks." The chief's eyes widened in shock. He quickly turned and yelled, "What? Get me the satellite images of the battlefield now." On the screen, images appeared showing the monsters crawling back into the abyss. The chief exclaimed in panic, "Wait a minute, this isn't a retreat, and it doesn't look like we're going back either. What they're doing is..." He slammed his hands onto the table, raising his voice. "It's a counterattack, a rescue operation. This is the strange creature's nest. There's internal chaos." The image of the strange creatures rushing down toward the abyss appeared before them. The chief pointed and said, "Look, they're turning around from the front lines and diving downward, charging forward without a care for their lives." Below, a flash of golden light lit up. The chief said, "It looks like in the center of the abyssal crack, a light flashed, and one of the strange creatures froze in panic, its eyes wide open." He continued, "There's something extremely terrifying down there." In an instant, the strange creature's head was severed. The chief shouted, trying to break free. Just as he spoke, a fiery phoenix soared up from the abyss. The flames surrounding it burned several strange creatures to ashes in an instant. The chief and the soldiers stared in awe, their eyes wide with shock. The chief shouted, "That's Lu Sheng." Lu Sheng landed lightly on the ground. Dong King-su, wrapped in his coat, was exhausted and resting in his arms, asleep. He was surrounded by flames. Lu Sheng held Dong King-su in his arms, standing on top of a high rock, looking down at the strange creatures. The enormous fiery phoenix behind him added to his imposing presence, making the strange creatures scream in fear. He looked down at her face, wrinkled in pain, and said with concern, "This isn't good. The strange creatures are too loud at this rate." Lu Sheng gently lifted off the ground, hovering in midair. He stood on top of the fire phoenix, which flapped its wings and flew toward the strange creatures, using a wind-riding skill to soar through the sky. The chief, stunned, shouted loudly, "What the hell is this? He's flying! Flying! Isn't that something only in legends? Only a few martial artists with perfect mastery over elemental powers can do that, like the legendary Wind Marshal Saint. That's just crazy. Is this really the 19-year-old elite general?" A bat with glowing red eyes flew quickly toward Lu Sheng. He looked up at it with a gaze full of killing intent and said, "Don't make a sound." From the clouds above, waves of energy shot down, striking the strange creatures that were about to attack him. A green aura surrounded him, radiating power. Lu Sheng raised his finger to his lips, signaling for silence. He then said, "If you make any more noise, I'll wipe all of you out." The strange creatures on the ground continued to growl, undeterred. The fire phoenix shot out golden beams of light toward them, causing the creatures to panic and turn to flee. The chief wiped the sweat off his forehead and muttered, "He can control lightning, fire, wind, and thunder. It's too much. How powerful is Lu Sheng really? How is he this strong?" He looked at Dong King-su, who was being held in Lu Sheng's arms, and said, "The woman he's holding is Dong Sheng Yi's younger sister, Dong King-su. Could it be?" The group stared at Lu Sheng holding Dong King-su, and someone whispered, "This is the wailing that made the 6th Army wear mourning clothes. It's because of a beauty that the army had to raise its forces in anger. There was once a king who, in his quest to regain his beauty, spilled blood over thousands of miles. The 6th Army wore mourning clothes, and he saved Dong King-su from the brink of death." The chief, holding a radio, said, "If those strange creatures are scared..." He spoke loudly into the radio, "Ha ha, all units get ready. Prepare to counterattack the abyss." The soldiers all shouted in unison, "Yes, sir." Dong Sheng Yi stood some distance away, hands in his pockets, leaning against a tent, lost in thought. His face was dark, filled with concern. Suddenly, a noise caught his attention and he looked up. Lu Sheng was descending from above. Dong Sheng Yi's eyes widened in shock. King, behind Lu Sheng, a blazing fire appeared. Dong Sheng Yi shouted in worry, Qing King Su. Suddenly, a wave of water shot toward him, covering his mouth. Lu Sheng coldly said, she just managed to fall asleep. Don't make noise. After seeing that Dong Sheng Yi had calmed down, Lu Sheng released his grip. Dong Sheng Yi, still a bit shaken, said, thank you. Thank you for saving King Su. Lu Sheng walked over and said, don't think that just because I'm not hitting you, I won't. If I say I'll cut off your martial arts, then I will. You better get ready. He lifted Dong King Su in his arms and quickly moved forward, continuing at the Eastern Military District's arena. I'll make it tough on you. Dong King Su suddenly woke up in her hospital bed, her face covered in sweat, her expression panicked, as if she had just woken up from a nightmare. In front of her stood Lu Sheng, his expression kind and gentle. He looked at her with a soft smile and asked in a calm voice, you're awake. Seeing Lu Sheng, Dong King Su smiled and said, I think I just had a really long dream. I dreamed that you saved me, she added. You even said you were going to take me home. Lu Sheng felt a little awkward upon hearing that. He gave a shy smile and scratched his head as if unsure of how to respond. After a brief hesitation, he answered, well, maybe. I just said maybe. What if it wasn't a dream, but really happened? Dong King Su replied. At those words, Dong King Su suddenly remembered the scene of Lu Sheng holding her in his arms. Before losing consciousness in his arms, she had still been able to clearly remember his face, the face of the man who had saved her. Back in the present moment, Dong King Su's expression turned slightly disappointed. She turned her head shyly to the side and, in a soft voice, said, thank you. Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng felt a bit sad and disappointed when he saw Dong King Su's expression. He didn't say anything, but silently thought to himself. Just earlier, she had hugged him tightly, but now, after emerging from the abyss and escaping the dangers of life and death, it seemed like the two of them had become strangely distant. At that moment, a light breeze drifted through the window of Dong King Su's hospital room. Only Lu Sheng and Dong King Su were in the room. Suddenly, they both decided to break the quiet atmosphere and speak at the same time. Lu Sheng said Dong. Meanwhile, Dong King Su called out Lu. Both of them were surprised at the coincidence. Their expressions showed shock, and they both exclaimed, ah. Dong King Su laughed to avoid the awkwardness. She turned to Lu Sheng and said, you go first. Lu Sheng smiled at that, shrugged his shoulders, and suggested, how about we go out to eat together sometime, when you're free? Dong King Su looked a bit confused and was caught off guard by Lu Sheng's sudden invitation. After a moment, she replied, sure. Lu Sheng blushed, feeling shy, and quickly looked away. Emboldened by her response, he continued, after we eat, we could go watch a movie. Dong King Su blushed as well, feeling shy just like him, and answered, okay. At that moment, Lu Sheng's mischievous hand reached out for Dong King Su's hand. He asked, after the movie, maybe we could go for a walk? Dong King Su answered, sure. Lu Sheng kept going. After the walk, we could find a bar and sit down. Dong King Su blushed even more, giggling awkwardly, turned her head to the side and said, okay. Seeing how quickly Dong King Su was agreeing without much thought, Lu Sheng was left stunned. Then he took Dong King Su's hand, smiled brightly, and said something that seemed like a subtle confession. For the new year, come home with me. As usual, Dong King Su responded without thinking, okay. Suddenly, she felt something wasn't quite right. She quickly turned to look at Lu Sheng, her eyes wide with confusion and surprise. Her face turned bright red, and she shyly stammered, ha. Seeing her reaction, Lu Sheng couldn't help but laugh loudly. Ha ha ha. It's settled then. In 2 days, I'll come pick you up for dinner. For now, rest up and get better. Then Lu Sheng gently pulled the blanket up over Dong King Su and gave her a few more kind words of advice. Her energy had been drained and she needed to recover. Dong King Su was touched by his gesture, feeling embarrassed and blushing as she lowered her head without saying anything. After saying that, Lu Sheng turned to leave. Before he walked out, he turned back to say goodbye with a friendly smile. I'm heading out now, but I'll see you later. Rest up. Once Lu Sheng left, Dong King Su was alone in the room. She suddenly felt an emptiness inside. She gazed at the door, hoping Lu Sheng might come back. Just then, the door opened. Dong King Su's heart lifted, thinking it was Lu Sheng returning. She jumped up, eagerly looking at the door with a joyful anticipation in her heart. Then the person outside the door wasn't Lu Sheng, as Dong King Su had been expecting, but Lin Wan Wan. Slowly, Lin Wanwan poked her head in and cheerfully said, "It's me." Immediately, Lin Wanwan happily rushed into the room and went straight to Dong King-su's hospital bed. She was holding a beautiful bouquet of roses in her hands. With a bright smile, she shouted, "Sister King-su, you're finally awake." Dong King-su was a bit confused by the excitement and asked, "Wan Wan, have I been asleep for a long time?" Lin Wanwan answered, "A full day and night." Then, with a teasing grin, she added, "Your boyfriend has been by your side, taking care of you the whole time." Dong King-su blushed, feeling embarrassed, and quickly looked away. "Boyfriend? What are you talking about?" she said, flustered. Seeing her reaction, Lin Wanwan couldn't help but smile mischievously, her expression one of triumph. "He." After hearing Dong King-su's response, Lin Wanwan teased, well, is that not the case? Just look at how you're acting, Sister King-su." She continued with a playful tone, "You don't seem like someone who isn't in a relationship." Dong King-su blushed even more, her gaze shyly drifting to the side. Lin Wanwan then went on to tell Dong King-su about the incident when she had fainted. "You don't know he went into the abyss alone, where the strange creatures were going wild just to save you." At this point, Lin Wanwan's expression became more lively. As she smiled brightly, she continued, "I think when looking for a boyfriend, you should find someone like him." When Dong King-su heard this, she didn't say anything. Her expression was filled with pure happiness, like someone deeply in love. She simply murmured, "Mmm." The next day, Lu Sheng was reading the news on his phone. One article caught his eye. General launches offensive, blows horn to call humanity to fight back against strange creatures. He scrolled up to read the next article. Suddenly, something about the headline seemed familiar. He exclaimed, "This is the article about going to war out of fury for a woman." Lu Sheng had bravely entered the 10th level abyss, becoming the leader of the Eastern Elite General Corps. It turned out that this article was about when he went to rescue Dong King-su. He slowly put his phone down and began reading the article aloud. He boldly ventured into the abyss, driven by passionate feelings, but his real goal was simply to save his wife. While this can be considered particularly glorious, after all, on the battlefield, personal heroism is always frowned upon, so this action can be forgiven. He smiled and said, "Looks like I was robbed of credit by the Sea of Souls. This time, I earned a total of 10 million merit points. All the mystic gold I threw near the 7th front line was sent back to me, not a single piece missing. In the end, I also received the Diamond Longwen Medal for combat merit." At this point, Lu Sheng thought about the moment when he was awarded the prestigious medal. He said, "The regional military commander himself presented it to me. That's enough to make anyone proud." He picked up his teacup and continued to reflect. "Back then, I exposed a lot of my abilities just to make sure Dong King-su could sleep peacefully. I'm sure that must have caught the attention of a lot of people." Lu Sheng continued, "That group of strange creatures, so pure and relentless, really did nearly drain all of my life force. In the end, when I managed to fly out, I was actually a bit exhausted." He took a sip of tea, then added, "I never would have believed, even in my wildest dreams, that one day I'd be completely drained like that." He scratched his chin, thought for a moment, and said, "I've heard that only martial artists at the martial saint level can make it out of the abyss. So, does that mean I'm strong enough to fight against a 9th rank martial saint now?" He continued, "Right now, probably not. Martial saints draw on the energy of the entire world. That's what gives them their power. They can do things like use a single movement to affect hundreds or even millions of people. A person's strength is limited, but the power of the world is endless. Trying to fight against that kind of force with just human power, it's probably impossible. Too difficult." Lu Sheng paused for a moment, then said, "But I still have a lot of room to grow. When I think about it, I haven't even broken through to the Grandmaster stage yet, but that's not so important anymore. My path has already diverged from that of a typical martial artist." His eyes drifted to the plate of mystic gold on the table, and he added, "But manipulating the energy of the world, both celestial and earthly, that's something I should still try to understand." He picked up a glowing mystic gold pellet and said, "Since I've earned so many merits, it's only fitting I take one of these with me." He examined the mystic gold, grinning as he spoke. "I think I can use all these resources to level up once more."